Today on the We Invested podcast, we have Tony Bradshaw, the author of The Millionaire Choice and the host of the Millionaire Choice podcast. Tony, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for joining. And before we get started, would you mind letting the people know how they can find you on the internet and social media?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I go under two names, obviously, Tony Bradshaw. You can find my blog and my social media handles, almost on every channel. The other one is just search for The Millionaire Choice. That's The Millionaire Choice. And you'll be able to pick up some of the free gifts and things I have out there for you.
That's awesome. So let's just kind of start from the top, man, and take it from the beginning. Where are you from and where did you grow up?
Yeah, so I'm kind of one of the oddballs, I would say, in a lot of the ways, is because I'm born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee. I still live in Nashville. I'm actually about 15, 20 minutes south of Nashville these days. But my dad still lives in the same home I grew up in. Matter of fact, all those tornadoes that come through Nashville, one finally got his house. And so he had a big 18-inch diameter, maybe 24-inch diameter tree dropped on the back half of his house last year.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting to come by and see the room that you grew up in a kid, and the whole back of the house is laid open, and your dad's bed's just kind of laying in there. It's pretty wild, but it happened during the daytime. He was at work, so everybody was okay.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that everybody was safe, man. But would you mind talking a little bit about how growing up in Nashville kind of impacted your outlook on life and success?
Yeah, sure thing. My parents were really kind of low. I don't want to say low income, but lower income family. We didn't have a lot of money. There were some years my dad, didn't make more than $7,000. My mom was the primary income earner. At times, she worked as a convenience store manager. Convenience stores at one point were like the most difficult job or most dangerous job in Nashville. And she herself was robbed at gunpoint. I lose track of how many times. I think it was like 5 different times. I still remember one time she came home at night, visibly shaking the first time that I had seen her that hard up. And the guy that had robbed her had put a 357 Magnum, the barrel of it, on the end of her nose. And wow. So she's literally looking down the barrel of a very large gun, working late at night. And, that's how we grew up. She did that for probably since I was about maybe 7 or 8 years old, probably till I got into college and out of college. And then she kind of looked for another job after that. But, 15 years doing that, and it paid the bills. My dad was a carpenter, and work is very seasonal. You're kind of like your own labor and contractor. But before that, he actually worked for a company called Wright Industries, which was a manufacturing company, like special machines and things like that. It was really well known. And I remember when Wright Industries went on strike one time. And as a little kid, and I don't remember how old I was, maybe about 6 years old, going down with my dad to the picket lines and standing around the trash barrel that was burning trash, around for that. Just stay warm and you're out there. And there's, a little bit of a war chest. A lot of the unions have war chests to, pay bills and things like that. And we did that. And that was when he actually switched careers into the carpentry world, started doing something a little different, went to work with my uncle. But, we were always my parents didn't really know how to manage money. I still remember, a lot of things going on, like, bounce checks. That was pretty common to hear my mom talking about that. Some months, my dad would take ATM money out and wouldn't tell her. And so then you're bouncing check after check after check. She thinks money's in the account. It's not. And then water would get cut off at times. And so we'd go out and cut the water back on using a water key, which is it's a tool, a welded piece of metal that you can turn the key with the water meter open. And so I would get sent out to do that occasionally. It happened more than one time. That works pretty well until they decide to padlock it. Eventually they'll lock it, and you have to, if you want your water on, you pay the bill, cut the lock. And if I remember, we cut the lock maybe once, and turn the water back on. Electricity would go off periodically with bills not being paid, and they would scrape together the money to pay it. But what I found is in my 20s, I didn't know how to manage money either. So I got out of college, was making pretty good money for a 23-year-old. 24-year-old, got my first W-2 out of college, made $39,000, and then realized when I got that W-2 to pay my taxes that I had never seen that much money in my life, and I couldn't understand where it went. And I was like, wow, like I spent everything, like I spent all of this, and somehow ended up $16,000 in debt. So that's like $55,000 in the wrong direction, is the way I say it. And at that point, I was very fortunate because I looked at that, and I'm a numbers guy, and I said, that math isn't working. Like if I do that again, that's going to end up in a bad place. Like that logic's not working. And that's when I started learning about money. And so I did what I grew up doing as a kid, and that's read magazines. I used to learn how to fish and work on cars from reading magazines at the convenience store. And so I went to Barnes and Noble, picked up magazines, picked up books on finance, and started learning everything I could. It didn't take very long because, the equation for making money isn't a very difficult equation. You just have to be armed with enough information to make a different decision, right? To do things better than you were doing before. And once I realized that, I did the math and realized, you know what? I think this 25-year-old broke kid out of college that doesn't know how to manage money, I believe I can be a millionaire by age 40. And the reason I believe that is because I did the math. I learned a principle of compound interest and how to multiply your money. And I learned a few little tools that you could use to, turn your money into something and like start to multiply it. And just armed with that little bit of information, that's where I set off on my journey to become a millionaire. And I was able to do that at age 40. And that's kind of my background, man. And, it's been a few little gaps in there that I left along the way. I kind of covered a lot of ground, but that's kind of the background of the Millionaire Choice and where it came from.
That's awesome, man. So, congratulations on becoming a millionaire. But would you say that was a dream or a vision or a goal that you've always had for yourself, or is it something that formed once you realized, you turned 25 or 24 and you looked at the numbers and you crunched the numbers?
Yeah, I had no idea what making money at that level meant. And, the most money that I'm aware of that my mother ever made was around 35,000. So when I got out of college and made 39,000, I thought I was hot stuff because I'm like, mom's been at this for 20 something years and I just got in the game. And I'm sitting on 39 grand, making more than my mom. I'm doing pretty good. So I felt like, I was a little cocky, how 20-year-olds are can be. At least I was. I don't know if all of them are that way, but I didn't really until I realized I was broke and I didn't want to be broke anymore. That is the moment. I call that like the financial awakening. And when you have that, then something can change in your life. And for me, I just decided, man, I don't want to be broke. I think there's a better way. I think I can become a millionaire. And that's what happened. It was a catalyst, and I didn't know a lot, but I knew enough.
Exactly. And so before we get into the story about, the action steps that you took to become a millionaire once you sat down and did the math, I just want to ask you about, your current company, that, your books and your podcast that you have now. So, I want to ask, what is the Millionaire Choice?
Yeah, so the Millionaire Choice is your choice to become a millionaire. So you're going to go through your entire life. All of us are, right? And you're no different. I'm no different. Everybody in the United States is no different. And probably the planet you get outside in the other countries may be a little bit different. But we're all going to get a job and we're all going to work. And you're going to work somewhere between 100 and 150,000 hours in your lifetime. So think about that. That's a lot of time, man. When you look at it, it's like, wow, man. So you got two choices. You can either work all that time and have nothing to show for it, or you can work all that time and build some wealth. And the only difference is how you think about your life, how you spend your money, and the plan that you have around it. And there's a lot of stuff that has to wrap up in that, but you really have two choices. And so that's what the Millionaire Choice is all about. It's making that choice to go, you know what? I'm going to make a few different decisions than I used to make. And I'm going to make a choice to become a millionaire. And I think once you put that stake in the ground, then you can start moving forward, moving in the right direction. And, that's what I did at 25. I said, hey, I'm going to be a millionaire by 40, put my stake in the ground. And I started working towards that goal. And then, over that 5 years or 15 years, you get a little bit smarter and you can drive forward. On the back end of that, Wesley, is what I call the millionaire plan. So, in my book, there's the Millionaire Choice, which is where your mindset starts to shift. And then there's the Millionaire Plan, which is where you get to put all of that information together to go, hey, I think I can be a millionaire by age 40 or whatever your age is. And you can actually map out a plan and a path to get there. I'm a planner by nature. I like to plan things. I went to school as an engineer. And so it's very natural for me to plan things out. And you've got to have that structure around anything that you want to do. It's just like if you're building a house, right? If you're building a house, you need a blueprint or a plan. Same thing with your finances. You need to put a plan together for them.
Awesome. And so, how would you say that you got started in this industry? You mentioned you went to school for engineering. What kind of gave you that spark to want to create a company, create a business, create a podcast around, just financial services and financial planning?
Yeah, so I think before I answer that, I've got to talk about the mindset, right? So I grew up in a job mindset family. My mom and my dad worked. They worked a lot. Some hours my mom would work 100 hours a week. Really stretched her. I remember her almost having nervous breakdowns. I've worked, 80 to 100 hours a week on a few projects in different points of my life. It really affects your family when you're working that much. When your kid, you come home and your 2-year-old kid or 3-year-old kid can't recognize his dad anymore after 30 days because you haven't been home. Like you've been going to work when he wakes up and you've been home after he goes to sleep. And all of a sudden a strange man shows up again. You're not that present in your kids' minds, but you have to break free from that job set mentality at some point if you want to, start your own business. For me, I grew up in a mindset of working for somebody else, a job mindset. Now I have a lot of creativity and a little bit of entrepreneurial stuff baked in me already, but it was kind of choked down, over, 45 years of working for somebody else. So you almost have to rekindle that. So your other question was, how did I get into finance? So after I stopped being an engineer, I went through a transition when the internet came about. And I had started learning how to code and program. So I thought it was fascinating that you could take data in somewhere in the world and put it into a system and then spit that data back out somewhere else for somebody else to see. And I thought that was the most fascinating, powerful thing I had ever seen because of the way you could communicate, but also the way you could share information without ever having talked to anybody or met with anyone. And this was about probably like 1997, 1998. So that started pulling me into the internet world and the internet business side of things. That was pre Google, pre Amazon. Amazon may have been coming on the scene in 1998. I think Bill Gates was still in denial that the internet was going to be anything. They called it a fad. And so when I transitioned fully from that, I went from being an engineer to working for a gentleman named Dave Ramsey. And so I joined Dave in the early days of his company. He'd been in business about 10 years when I got there, 9 or 10 years, but the company was about 33 people. And so I joined the team because they had recognized that this internet thing was going to be important. And so they started putting a team together to work on the internet. So I joined his team as part of that, and 33rd employee in the company at the time, and then helped build out their entire digital business. So for 15 years that I worked with Dave, that's what I did. I helped all of his different businesses figure out how to make money and create brands and create technology that allowed them to do business online. And then I left Dave's company in 2016. You've been with a company that long. Sometimes they want you to do things you can't do. You want to do things they don't want you to do. So it's kind of like a parting of the ways. And so I had to move on. As I say it, I got voted off the island. So it was my time to go. And, that's not abnormal. So from there, I went out to Salt Lake City and worked for a gentleman, which we can talk about a little bit later if you want. But that's where I started getting my vision, because there was another guy out there he had a similar story to Dave's, and he had a much, much smaller company. So when I left Dave's company, it was about 550 people. When I joined this other company, there was like 13 people out there, and they were, raising investment capital for it. So it was an investor-driven business model versus, a bootstrapped model. And that's where I actually, working on that company was really where I started to shape my own vision for what I would do if I had the power and the control to kind of grow things. And my relationship with that company went sideways about 5 months in. About 2 months after I was there, the founder said, "Hey, I don't know how you're going to handle this, but I'm under investigation by the SEC." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. That's probably not a good thing. Probably don't want to do that." And then a few months later, that was over. But those 5 months were crucial and critical to formation of what later became the Millionaire Choice. And it was right after that time is when I started writing on the Millionaire Choice in 2017. And it's kind of continuing to grow and, reach people. And with a positive message of, anyone can become a millionaire. Why not you?
That's awesome, man. And it's very cool to just to hear about your history. Like I mentioned earlier before we started recording, just that you have a very rich history working with someone like Dave Ramsey at his company when it was, fairly small, very small, and then moving to, a company out in Salt Lake City, which was even smaller. So you just had the chance to like work on the ground floor and really see and understand how these businesses work, how they can become profitable, how you can grow the businesses as well. So, one question that I want to ask you is that from working with these two companies, what are some of the most important values or lessons that you've pulled and learned from working for these, I guess you would call them startup companies?
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about it is in learning from these companies, there's a pattern, right? So some people do it well, some people don't. I'm still probably mentally in the transition of shifting from a job mindset to an entrepreneur mindset. So that may sound weird, but I've had a couple of business coaches I've talked to, and they've told me, like, you still think like an employee, you still think like a job. You're not thinking like a full blown entrepreneur. You're like one leg in, one leg out. And I've talked to another friend of mine locally who's an entrepreneur, and I asked him that question. And I'm like, how long did it take you to really shift from the job mindset to the entrepreneur mindset? And he said it took him 10 years to fully shift from a job, because you've got that ingrained in you. Like since you start school, that's ingrained in you. We don't understand that. Like, that's a system that you're being programmed with at a very young age. You watch your parents go to work, so you start thinking, oh, one day I got to go to work for a job. That's how we're wired to think. It doesn't have to be that way. So your question was, some of the lessons I've learned? Well, the ones that were important, I think, were probably one of the biggest ones is integrity. When you say you're going to do something, you need to do it. People need to know how they take you. Integrity is about consistency of interactions with people, where they know what they're getting when they work with you, right? They know that you've got their best interest, or your best interest in mind when they're working with you. Integrity was very key in working inside of the Ramsey organization. That was a really big deal for Dave. Doesn't mean sometimes people slip up and make mistakes and things like that, but day in, day out, you're going to have integrity. Like, sometimes people's minds will, you'll forget something, or maybe something will go by a couple of days. You forget something you said, maybe weeks or months. And those are not really, you can't call those lapses in integrity. You more or less like go, hey, that's just human. That's being human, right? We're going to make mistakes and miscommunicate things. When I got to Salt Lake City, the reason things kind of melted down is because there was, I wouldn't say there was blatant lack of integrity, but there was definitely some gray areas that were misrepresented. And so you go, how does a company that's raised so much money end up in so much trouble, with the government? In some ways, you could say, hey, the government's pushing the envelope a little bit, which maybe they were, but maybe not. And so integrity, that was a seeing both sides of it, high levels of integrity versus not really low levels of integrity, but like some that like push the envelope just a little bit, that can cause a lot of problems. So I got to see that. Obviously, with entrepreneurs, I think this is something I learned myself, is it takes a lot of energy, right? So I think anything that you're going to do, and I think this, it's an equation on how you can find success. So a lot of people go, oh, I'll never be successful, or I'm never going to be able to be that person. The reality is it takes a lot of energy to find success in anything, whether that's your job, starting a business. And once you understand that equation, you don't think of it as work. Like, I got to work a lot. You have to think of it as a form of energy. Like, if you put the right energy into something, you may get more traction than if you just put a lot of work into something, because work doesn't always produce results. It has to be the right amount of energy and the right type of energy into things. And that's, I think those are two critical principles for entrepreneurs to get things off the ground, and also careers, right? So at Dave's, I was very successful in the corporate side of things. That's where I was growing a business and working with people and developing people. But it took a lot of energy to get that stuff done in a corporate environment. But I also had to put a lot of energy into my personal development, right? So, and that's another key to success. You have to pay attention to your personal development. And I think that's probably one of the main reasons I was able to find success, is because I took my personal growth very, very seriously. From reading back then, it was reading books as much as you could. YouTube didn't exist, podcasts didn't exist. None of the social media platforms, they were coming online, but they weren't there yet. So you didn't have a lot of the resources we have today to work on personal development. You had a limited amount of those, but they were still there and available. And I took full advantage of those.
Something pretty interesting that I think you mentioned, it's just that you had trouble transitioning from the employee mindset to the entrepreneur mindset. So, the question I want to ask is, I guess it's two questions in one. Um, what is the entrepreneur mindset in your opinion? And then how did you focus on kind of making that transition? What steps did you take to make that transition over to the entrepreneurship mindset?
Yeah, I would say I'm still in transition in a lot of ways, but I'll tell you what I'm learning in the middle of this transition. And it's this, it's kind of like in the days I'm in today, I really feel a lot like my early days at the Ramsey organization when I was helping grow the digital business, because we weren't making a lot of money digital. I mean, we were getting like maybe 3 orders a day, 3 online orders a day when I joined the company. We didn't have an event management system where we were selling event tickets. I had to personally build the first event management system that we had on staff. We did. We had to build the first lead generation. So this was before lead generation was even really big on the internet. We built that system to take real estate leads in online and then take those leads and cycle them back out through a portal where all these real estate agents could log in. That's all very entrepreneurial stuff. And we had to push that through the organization because it was so new that, the powers that be weren't like, what? We don't want to do that. That'll never work. We're like, no, you got to do it this way, and this is like circa 2001, 2002, this is 20 years ago now. And we were pushing the stuff into the company. So with the entrepreneurial mindset, I think the things that you have to figure out what makes you tick, right? So how do you stay focused? I would say I am a creator entrepreneur. I think there are sales entrepreneurs. And so the sales entrepreneurs personally probably have, I like to believe they have an easier time because especially in the early days, you have to make money. Like if you're going to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to make money. And somebody that's motivated to sell things or to create things to sell, that person is going to do, I think, a lot better in that mindset. So for me, though, I am a builder. I'm a visionary strategist, builder, system kind of entrepreneur. That's what my background is in engineering. I was raised by a father that was carpenter. I worked on cars. I do things with my hand. I like to make and build things like websites. I like to build technology. But that doesn't pay the bills unless you can sell it. So you have to have this spirit of promotion or this, self-promotion or this spirit of salesmanship where you're constantly waking up every morning with a goal. You go, I need to make money today. How am I going to make money today? I've actually got that question on my board back here. How am I going to make money today? What am I going to do today? And how am I going to make money today? And, someday I might not have to think that way because the system will be completely in place and automated. But until you find that monetary system, and that's really what a business is, honestly, it is a money-making system. And until you crack the code on whatever money-making system you have, then, you're going to have to be scrappy. You're going to have to figure out how to make it work. That's the phase I'm in. I'm in that bootstrap, make it scrappy kind of phase. But learning how to reprogram your brain into those segments, and your energy, right? Where's your energy going? How much? Because you only have so much of it you can get out. And those are the big things for me. I would tell you another thing that might be helpful for you and your listeners is to think about it in a gamifying way, right? So we live in a video game driven age. I am a reformed gaming addict. Thank God I haven't played any video games, reasonably long lengths of times in about a year and a half. But prior to that, I've probably logged close to 20,000 hours in video game time. Way too much. But here's what I would say about business and entrepreneurship. You can gamify your mindset around your business. You can do it. You can 100% do it. So if you identify what are called key performance indicators, they're called KPIs. There's a lot of books out there on that. And you can figure out what metrics you need to watch to tell if your business is headed in the right direction, doing the right things, or how to monetize, right? And it's one thing to do it for, I did it for Dave for 15 years, but now I'm having to do it for myself, and I'm having to almost crack open that code again and look at it and work on it. But yeah, gamifying your business is a big topic for me right now, and getting your energy from those numbers, seeing those numbers go up, whatever those numbers are, website visitors, podcast listeners, or whatever, but find those numbers that can give you some energy and keep you motivated.
That's incredible. No, and I think that's the genius way to look at business and sometimes even life, especially like when you're trying to become a millionaire. To kind of, I like to view things as monopoly in my own head. So, um, I agree with that statement 1,000%. But the next question I wanted to ask you is that, and I kind of wanted to take it back a little bit to when you were 25, and you were, just realizing, man, I want to be a millionaire by the age of 40. Um, I just want to ask, what was the plan that you created in order to, become that millionaire and accomplish that goal and accomplish that task?
Yeah, mine was pretty simple. I would say when I look at a millionaire plan, and break it down, which I do this in my book as well, is you have to look at it in stages. So the first stage is you have to change your mindset. That's the first thing you have to do. You have to go, okay, I can live the rest of my life, work 150,000 hours and be broke at the end of it, or I can be wealthy. All right. You have to mentally make that choice. Which one do I want to be? And some people that listening might say, oh, Tony, you're making it sound too easy. It's not that easy. Let me tell you, if you don't think it's that easy, go listen to the people that are on my show. I've got an African-American guy. His name is Willie Mandrell. Willie Mandrell. His grandma, check this out. Grandma, 6th grade education, grew up in like the 40s, 50s, and 60s. 6th grade education, moved to Boston from the South, got into real estate, millionaire. During the hardest times, she went through the civil rights movement. She went through all the crap, man. Millionaire. Her son didn't make the same choices, got into drugs, became a drug addict, didn't do anything with his life. His son, though, came back and said, hey, I want to live like grandma. I don't want to live like dad. Mm-hmm. So now Willie is a millionaire real estate guy. So the stories are everywhere, man. I could go on about these stories for days and days and days. Okay. So that's the first step, is you got to shift your mindset, and you got to shift it from a scarcity mindset to abundance mindset. There's over 40% of the world's millionaires live in the United States. 40%. We only have about 3% of the population. So we have roughly 15 times more millionaires in the United States than we should even have. So that's what makes us unique in the world at large. Also, over 10% of the households in the United States are millionaire households. I think it's more like 12, 13% now. But those are staggering statistics, because you're talking about 1 in 10 households actually are millionaire households. So the possibilities are there for anybody that wants to do it. You can do it. You can make it happen. Now, once you get that mindset shifted, you got to look at your foundation, and your foundation becomes, do you have strong character? Like, if you don't have strong character, you can't build or keep wealth. You just can't. And then my mom and dad didn't teach me about money, but they taught me about character. They taught me about work ethic, integrity, responsibility, self-discipline, focus. I learned some of those along the way. Those are what I call foundational items. Then you have to learn that your time is your most precious asset, because we all have the same amount of time. And it's what you do with that time that matters. So I mentioned earlier, I spent 20,000 hours playing video games. Well, fortunately, the spare time I had after I worked my job and played my video games, I used it to figure out how to make money and to grow myself individually skills. So what's sad is when you think about what I could have achieved if I had taken all those hours, those 20,000 hours, 20,000 hours, if I'd taken all those and actually used those for something productive. Those weren't productive for me, but I had enough that I did invest in that I was able to still get where I'm at. So once you get to that, then you get into the financial side of things. And so you get past this foundation stuff, then you get into what you need to do is get money smart. You have to learn, like everybody has to learn about money. Anybody that's built wealth has had to take time to learn about money. And if they didn't, well, then guess what? You don't get to build wealth if you don't learn about it. So you spend 12 years in math, English, and science, school, right? That's what they teach us, but they don't teach us much about money. And when they do, they usually teach us about how to go into debt and get credit cards. So those are not good things. So you need to learn about money, and it's a lifelong learning. So it's not like, hey, I took a class in high school to learn how to manage my finances. No. You can't think of it that way. You have to think of it as, what am I doing every year to get a little bit smarter in managing my money. What am I doing? What am I reading? Am I reading Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad Poor Dad? Am I reading Tony Bradshaw, Millionaire Choice? Am I reading Dave Ramsey's Told Me Makeover? Name it. You name it. There's thousands of authors out there, that are writing this stuff. I just talked to a good one today, Good Money Revolutions. Great guy. And I love the premise of his book, helping people make more money so they can do more good. So there's so many people you can learn from that can shape your mind and help you keep on track. And then you mentioned at 25, here's was my financial plan at 25. It was pretty simple. I made about close to $4,000 a month, about $3,500, paid my taxes. When I was done, I had about $3,000 left over. Okay. Actually, it might've been close. Yeah. About $3,000. So, and I took my budget, instead of spending all my money, I made a very simple change. I said, you know what? I'm going to pay off my debt. I had about 16,000. I'm going to pay off my debt $1,000 a month. 16 months, I'm going to be debt free. I never want to be in debt again. I'm going to be debt free. I took the other 1,000 and I said, I'm going to invest this money. I'm going to put 500 into stocks and 500 into mutual funds. And it's going to be automatic. So every month, the automatic draft hit my account to take my $500 and stick it in a mutual fund. Okay. Every month that happened. Then my last 1,000, my third 1,000 was actually what I lived on. Now, fortunately, my living expenses were so low that that worked for me. So I had a $300 a month car payment. That was part of my debt payoff too. So that was included in that batch. And then I was living off that. But that was my simple plan. That was all I needed, because that's what gets you moving in the right direction. And then you learn along the way. And that's the biggest thing, is to get moving in the right direction, get your money moving in the right direction. And what I would tell people today, so those are the three plans. The way I say it is, you have to have a debt plan. You have to have a debt plan. What are you going to do with the debt you got? You have to have an investing plan, and you have to have an income plan. Okay. So my income plan is I'm going to figure out how to work less and make more. It's very simple. Now, did I imagine that I could ever make $100,000 a year as a young guy who grew up in a family with a maximum income of about 35 grand in a job? No, I never imagined that I would be able to break $100,000 in income. That was just not a number that people in my social status ever could imagine, like reaching that number. So, but my plan was I could make more money a little bit, but I work less. So I was working probably 60 hours a week as a 25-year-old. And I'm like, I'm going to work less, make more. It's going to even out. And then I'm going to have my freedom and my life back. That was as simple as my income strategy was back then. And then, things kind of developed from there. But the biggest thing is get moving in the right direction, Wesley. And I think you know that is, once you get going in the right direction, weird things can happen. The universe converges, some people say, law of attraction, and things just develop. And that's the cool thing about, life and, making decisions like that. If you make more positive decisions in your life, good things are going to happen. So try to make more positive decisions than decisions that affect you negatively.
Well said. Very well said. So, for individuals that maybe haven't grown up, knowing much about finances and money management and financial literacy, what would you say are some ways that they can break free from their family's bad financial habits, or, learn bad financial habits?
Yeah, I think the first thing you got to do is change your mindset, which we talked about. Realize that you don't have to live the way you grew up. You can actually move. You got to break free from medicating or this habit of spending money. That's the first thing. So you rewire your brain to go, let's say you made $1,000 this month. Let's just say $1,000. Okay, it's an easy number. You can work a $16 an hour job and make $1,000. Okay. You first have to go, what am I going to do with this grand? Like, what am I going to do with this? Am I going to go blow it and go buy fast food? Am I going to go to Starbucks and buy coffee? Am I going to go buy a new TV? I'm going to buy tickets. What am I going to buy? If you can take that consumer mindset and dump it, just get rid of it. So that when you make $1, the first thing you think about is, probably like if you're going to church or something, like, let's do my tithe. If you're living in the community like I am, it's like, hey, you do this first. Once that stuff's taken care of, then you go, okay, where's the rest of this go? And you need to reprogram your mind to go, I want to invest as much money as I physically can. So you become more of a investor mindset driven person versus a consumer mindset driven person. So you put multiplying your money first versus spending your money. And it's a rewiring of your brain, because we grow up being programmed to spend that money. I figure what the number is, 45,000 or some ridiculous amount of ads that we see every week on television or listen to on radio. But everybody's trying to get a piece of the money that we've earned. And we just have to reprogram our brains to put it somewhere else, put it somewhere that's going to, multiply that dollar. Give you a great example. Let's say you go out and buy $1,000 TV. Let's say how old are you, Wesley?
27.
27. So you're going to take $1,000. $1,000 may be a lot for TV, maybe it's not, but let's just use a number. Let's say 500. That's a more reasonable number, unless you want to get a huge big screen, right? I like the big screens. So $500. You're 27. So how many years between where you're at now and, let's say, 67, which is roughly a retirement age? That's 40 years, right? 40 years. So using what's called the rule of 72 and a 10% interest rate, your money is going to double about every 7 years. All right. So almost on every 7. So between now and the time you retire, that is going to be around 40 up to 42. You're going to be about 6 cycles. So you're going to have 6 cycles of doubling your money. So if you said you go into Best Buy, right? I don't know if you shop at Best Buy or Amazon, right? But you go in Best Buy. What's your big TV store? Where would you go buy TV, Wesley?
Best Buy.
All right, Best Buy, right? I buy mine at Best Buy. So you go in tomorrow with this $500, going, man, I got some extra cash in my pocket, $500. You go, okay, I can buy this $500 TV, or I can invest this $500. If I invest this $500, it's simple math, right? You got roughly 42 years. That's divide 42 by 7. That's 6 times. It's going to double. So 500 becomes 1,000. 1,000 becomes 2,000. 2,000 becomes 4,000. 4,000 becomes 8,000. 8,000 becomes 16,000. And 16,000 becomes 32,000. So how much did that TV cost you, Wesley?
32,000.
That's exactly right. And if you can program your brain to think that way about the money you make today and go, wow, that's what it's going to be out in the future. Now, that is a standard investment principle right there. Okay. Now I'm running around with some guys now. I used to think I was special because I was a millionaire by age 40. And now I start meeting all these guys that are millionaires at age 25. And they came from broke families that were worse off than I was. I'm like, how? Like, I felt like I was it, man. And then now I'm like, dude, these guys are like, I got a friend, Jeremy Newsom. He's got an island in the British Virgin Islands. He grew up in a, not too well to do family. Made his first investment when he was 6 years old, when he bought Apple stock. Now he's got, millions and millions and millions. He's teaching people how to invest. And and he thinks that way. He goes, if you talk to him, he'll go, Wesley, when I go to Starbucks, I don't think about buying Starbucks. I think about investing in Starbucks. So Starbucks pays me to buy their coffee. He goes, when I want to buy a Tesla, I don't go buy a Tesla. I go invest in Tesla, and Tesla pays me to drive their cars. And it's a totally different way of looking at things, man. And but it takes a while to get your brain wrapped around it. It really does, because it's so counter to culture.
Exactly. No, and I think that's an incredible way to look at things. And I've actually never thought about it like that, with the opportunity cost, I guess is what it would be referred to as. But yeah, man, I mean, you take that $500 and once you put it in those terms, you just spent 32,000 on a TV. That'll definitely make you reconsider, buying anything frivolous.
Yeah, no doubt. It kind of makes you a little depressed. You're like, well, I ever spend money again? But no, you still got to have some fun. That's why you got to have some fun money. You got to have fun money.
Exactly. Well, Tony, one thing I want to say, man, and that I admire about you, and a common theme that I hear throughout your story is that, you've always been innovative. You've always thought for the future. And, you mentioned that in 2001, you were working on a team of people, or matter of fact, 1997, you were working on a team of people who were focused on the internet when the rest of the world thought it was a fad. Or, when you were 25, you had the foresight enough to think, man, let me go ahead and plan on being a millionaire when I'm 40. And something else that I saw when I was doing my research is like you kind of had the foresight to see the importance of it is crypto, investing in cryptocurrency. So not to dive too deep into your investments or anything, but is there any backstory behind how you got started into crypto, how you learned about it, what you think about it, anything like that?
Yeah, I think crypto is a real interesting thing, and I'll give you a big picture of it where I'm at today. And I think this evolves over time. But when I worked for Dave Ramsey, we had a young guy in there named Luke Stokes. Matter of fact, he was just messaging me on social media this week. And Luke came into the company. I remember it being 2011. He was saying it was like 2013. And but I'm pretty sure it was a little bit earlier than that. He was pushing Bitcoin inside of our company, and it was like, that's not a real thing. We're not doing that. We're not, that's what is this, flexible currency. That's just a stupid idea, right? So fast forward, back then in 2011, cryptocurrency, Bitcoin was like 30 cents a coin, right? So if you'd put $10,000 in Bitcoin back in 2011, it'd be worth like over 150 million bucks right now. So like you're talking this is an investment growth that it just doesn't happen like ever. It doesn't happen. And so people go, oh, that I don't trust it. Like that's not real. That's not going to happen. And I've got a couple articles I wrote about. I would highly recommend, your audience go look at those if they don't understand that principle. And the best way I can say it is this, if you roll back the clock, let's go back the calendar 100 years. Let's go back 100 years into the Great Depression. We look at what was going on during the Great Depression, what triggered the Great Depression, all the things that were going on. You got Spanish flu. You got a big vaccine push. I think they were given, I've read, up to 14 different vaccines to people during the Spanish flu in the United States. The United States lost 10 million of 100 million people. We had 100 million citizens, lost 10 million, 10% of the population. What else happened? You had the Great Depression come in. You had a big financial upheaval, if you really look at it, because that all happened around the same, right around the same time. You had the Federal Reserve Bank got created. You had the Internal Revenue Service got formalized. It became, income taxes became a fixed structure inside of the United States, along with the Federal Reserve. And then you had Social Security. So you had three major financial changes that occurred inside the United States, along with an epidemic and along with vaccine push. It's like, that's kind of interesting. So let's fast forward 100 years, almost exactly into that same time frame. And we're sitting at a very similar crux. You see a lot of parallels between where we're at today and where we were then. You got gas prices up, at least 100% right now. Probably going to go higher. I hope not, but it looks like they might. We're still kind of like seeing, I don't think COVID's done with us yet. I think the media is going to keep going with that. We're going to see some after effects of that. Hopefully not, but maybe. So how does cryptocurrency fit into that? The thing that I tell people is if you look at that financial shift that happened 100 years ago, I find it very interesting that cryptocurrency is sitting right in the middle of another financial shift. Cryptocurrency is acting like something that's never really been created before. And that's this. If it's functioning as a currency, it's functioning as an investment, and it's functioning as a piece of technology all at the same time. And that's never happened before in our history. And so when people go, why is it growing so fast? Why is it doing it? Well, it's because of that reason. It's not a full currency yet. It is becoming a currency. It's not fully there yet. So for example, we have about 7 billion people on the planet, but cryptocurrency has, last I checked, somewhere estimated between 400 and 500 million users worldwide. Okay. So you're only about, a sixth of the way there on penetration. You're not there yet, a 14th of the way. I'm sorry, a 14th. So if you got 7 billion, we're at 500 million, you got double, 14. So you're 1/14 of the way there to full adoption. And that's where I think it's going to go eventually, is you're going to see a full adoption of cryptocurrency in some format. So in the technology curve, when you think about the iPhone, when the iPhone first came out, who bought it? Well, it was the people that buy all the new tech. It was, there's a lot of them, but there's not that many of them. And then after those guys buy it, who buys it next? Well, in the technology curve, it's called early adopters. And then after the early adopters, you get into the early majority, and then you go over this hump, which is like a technology curve. And then you start coming down the backside of that. And that's when you get the late majority, and then you get the laggards, what's called laggards. And so right now we are still in the early adoption phase. And that's why you're seeing this tremendous spike, because we're coming up that curve on the adoption of the new technology. And eventually we're going to crest over the hump and then start sliding down the backside. And everybody that's on the backside of that curve are going to be users of the technology, but they're not going to be the ones that benefit from the investment growth of the technology. That's what I believe is going to happen. Now, that being said, cryptocurrency, there's nothing I'm going to do that's going to stop it from coming. There's nothing I can do to do that. It's going to come. It's going to be here. Do I think cryptocurrency in the long run is going to be a good thing or a bad thing? I'm a little hesitant on crypto but for this reason, and that's this. When all money in the world, when you think about the Russian ruble, the Japanese yen, the Mexican peso, the list goes on, hundreds of different currencies. When all of those currencies exist as a one or a zero in the world, that bothers me a little bit. It does. And when you think about crypto that says, hey, if I want to go out and buy a coffee today, that coffee is going to be recorded into a record that is going to live on for 100 years. And anybody can go see every dime I've spent and everywhere it went. And that's all traceable. It's all recordable. And the way I say it is this: if we had cryptocurrency in place from the beginning of the world, let's go, I'll roll the clock back to Adam and Eve, right? Adam and Eve was using Bitcoin, right? And you would come all the way forward. Every single thing that was purchased between now and then and Adam and Eve, we would have a record of it, and we would know everything they spent. We would know every nail that Noah put in the boat, every board that he bought to fix that, to make that boat. We would know the Indians that bought the Louisiana Purchase. We would see the financial record. We would see all of this. I'm sorry, Louisiana Purchase was not Indians. I'm thinking the island up in New England area. So you would see all of these transactions, and they'd be recorded. And I don't know that that's a good thing. I don't know that that's a good thing that you have all of those things being available for anybody that wants to see them, because I'm just hesitant about that. But then again, is that going to stop it? No, it's not. Is it going to continue to come? Yes, it is. And it's going to continue to go up. Bitcoin eventually will probably hit $1 million. It's probably going to go higher than that, just because of the sheer numbers. You're looking at all currency in the world being converted into cryptocurrency, and that will continue to happen.
Yeah, man, I really feel like, and I believe that crypto, I'm a fan of crypto, by the way, but I believe that crypto will help push that new world order forward, and having that one global currency. I'm a conspiracy theorist, so I believe in all of that too.
Yeah. Well, it's not a conspiracy if there's two things you look at. Ready for this?
I'm ready.
Money and bodies. If there's money and bodies involved, you can just go, that's not a conspiracy. That's just there's some truth. There's truth there somewhere in that. That's where I've gotten to at this point. But yeah, if you want to go down that road just a little bit, you should look up the 1988 Economist magazine. Have you seen that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So if you look that up, what you're going to see, and your listeners are going to see, is you're going to see a bird that looks like an eagle, a brown eagle, or call it a phoenix. And on top of it is standing on top of all the currencies in the world, or at least a lot of them. And all of them are on fire. Okay. So it's standing on top of all this cash that's burning up, and it's got a gold chain around its neck with what looks like a cryptocurrency. It's got a Greek symbol on it, right? And it looks suspiciously similar to a Bitcoin. And I'm not saying it is, but it looks like it. That magazine came out in 1988, and the headline is it time for a new world currency, or a world currency? And that's 30 years ago, a little over 30 years ago.
Yeah, that's insane, man. But I've been seeing this book float around on social media. Like, I think it came out in the 80s too, where it just had all these things predicted about what the future is gonna look like and be like. So yeah, I definitely believe This was all pre-planned, but I'll definitely be a part of the early adopters and at least benefit off of it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's going to be around whether you or I do anything with it. It's going to be here. So there is opportunity to be made there. Now, I got into crypto in 2017. I had to sell off most of my portfolio. I kept some of it, and I've rebought back in, but I had to pay some bills and used it for that. What I'm teaching people right now, Wesley, is in cryptocurrency, just to get people okay with the concept, is really to consider crypto as a form of currency right now. And how can you do that? And how does it fit into your financial plan? And this is what I do. A lot of people keep their emergency fund in a bank account. I really tell them to say, hey, consider splitting it into like 3 different ways, because it's all currency, right? So keep a little cash, as much as you feel, comfortable with. It can, if you need it, you got it, right? Consider buying some gold or silver, and then consider buying cryptocurrency, because all 3 forms of those are currency. Which one of those 3 has gone up in value the most in the last year? Bitcoin. Or gone down the least? Bitcoin. So you've got, you can look at that and go, how do I protect my money? How do I make an investment? Of those 3, Bitcoin is the only one that's functioning like an investment. Gold and silver are like hedges against losses in finance. Now, I believe gold and silver are undervalued. I personally believe gold and silver, the price has been fixed for many, many, many years and manipulated. I think the real price of gold is probably around $15,000 or more per ounce. Right now, it's trading around $19,000 an ounce, and we don't have time to go into why I think that. But that's where my head's at. But on the contrary, cash is going down in value. What they tell us, it's 9%, right? It's probably more like 30%. Like everything's up 30% or more. Cars are up, everything's
Right.
up.
Right.
So that cash is just going down, down, down. And and I hate to say this, but you talk about Russia and Ukraine right now, but Russia is not even taking. They still want to buy Russian oil just to pay, and they're not even taking currency anymore. They're not taking U.S. dollars. They've told everybody to pay them in rubles. They got to pay them in Russian rubles, or they're not getting any oil. And that's because they don't see any value in the U.S. dollar right now, or the euro,
Man, no, and it is a very crazy time with inflation and just how high these prices are going. So it only makes sense, man, to get rid of your cash as much as possible, man, as much as possible, and put it in these different investments and these different assets to help your money grow and not lose value as quickly, But one question that I wanted to ask you: how do you define success as an entrepreneur?
Yeah. So I would say success for me is, I don't know if you've heard this term, but what is your personal mission statement? Have you heard that before?
Yes.
So I think I've gone through life driven by really a need to, from a spiritual standpoint, go, who does God want me to be? Let me see if I can say this correctly. What does God want me to do? Where does God want me to go? And who does God want me to be? So that's been kind of like my driving kind of force of going forward. And then, this whole thing about a personal mission statement is more of a newer concept to me. Probably in the last 10 years, I've heard that term. And so for me, I've had to come to go, what is my personal mission statement? What does success mean to me? And I'm in the middle of that, right? I could go write this book and put this book out there and have a successful podcast, make a lot of money, maybe help some people with some cash, help some orphans, help some widows, make the world a better place. But for me, that's not success. So success for me in this season of life is probably twofold. One, how can I make people's lives better? And 2, more specifically, is how can I fundamentally change the financial system for people? So like if I do all of this and I'm successful helping people and reaching people, maybe 100,000 people, maybe a couple million people have their lives changed, maybe. But that doesn't fundamentally change the system. The next batch of kids that gets born that doesn't know my stuff is not going to be impacted by me. So I'm really in the business right now of trying to create a citywide financial transformation system. And what I mean by that is, how can I bring people together in Nashville like myself? There's hundreds of us here, that we can work together to put a millionaire plan or a financial plan in everybody's hands in Nashville. There's 2.5 million people here in Nashville. So if I can create that system, and I can work with people to create that system, then I can take that system and move that system to Memphis, Tennessee, or to Austin, Texas, or to Dallas, Texas. It's the system that matters. It's not my book doesn't matter. I can take my book out, throw it away, and put somebody else's book in my place. Most of these books are 80, 90% the same. But what I'm after is to create that system where we work together to make sure that everybody has an abundance-driven financial future. That's really what I'm after. You know, it only takes about $3,000 to $5,000 if you invest it the first year a child is born to turn that kid into a millionaire. If you did $10,000, they'll be a multimillionaire in their 50s and 60s. And so that's real freedom, right? So you if you can do that, you're done with student loans, you're done with mortgage debt, you're done. Yeah, basically, you don't even need banks anymore once you've accomplished that, because there's abundance, and it can be done. I do believe it can be done, because that money right now is flowing. It's flowing away from the people, and it's flowing to these institutions. What we want to do is reverse that flow so that the money flows. Because what is money at its core, Wesley? What do you think money is at its core?
I'm not sure.
Well, I've come to the conclusion it's very simple. You go to work, like I said earlier, 150,000 hours. So there's a monetary value to your life and your time. So money at its core is just a medium of exchange to collect your time and efforts and fruits of your labor. That's it. And that system, the system we have in place now, for the most part, collects that time and that fruit of your labor and gives it to a very small group of people at the core, like at the very, very top. Now, some people like me learn how to work the system a little bit, and we get to keep some for ourselves, right? But the vast majority of people, my dad included, he's not a wealthy man. You know, he's not. He's getting by. He's 72 years old, working full-time job right now. He'll probably work full-time job till he can't work anymore. It's just going to be the way it is. That's not a good way to look at things. So my purpose, as you asked before, my purpose in life right now, what does success look for me right now? It looks like creating that system to where I can have a long and lasting impact on society. And I call that a purpose, right? So that's my purpose. But I also have a purpose for my money. So before, when I used to make money, I made money just because it was the right thing to do. I invested it because it was the right thing to do. I wouldn't say I had a purpose behind doing it. Now I feel like I've graduated to another level to where I go, no, I have a purpose and a responsibility to make as much money as I can, because the more money you have, the more good you can do. Right. And I'm a big believer that if the good people don't have the money, then the bad people do. It's a simple equation. And there's a lot of bad people that have a lot of money right now. And that's why when you go, why is, all this stuff, why are millions of children and people going hungry in the world? I'm going to tell you, there's plenty of money. There's plenty of food. They don't want to solve the problem. They don't want to fix it. So, and that's because the people that got the money don't want to fix that problem. And so you can do that for anything. You can name any problem like that. And we have, as humanity, we have the ability to address and fix a lot of this stuff. The problem is, at least some of the problem is, the people that have the wherewithal to do it, they don't intend to do that. They don't want to do that. And so hopefully we'll be able to take a few of those. I think your generation, Wesley, is much more intentional and sensitive to that, like the needs of the planet, the needs of the people. And hopefully you guys will do a better job than maybe previous generations have done.
How would you like for people to remember you and your company?
Wow. I've never been asked that. That's a pretty good question. I would like people to remember me and the company as the company that helped them reach their full potential. I would say whether it's money or life or just, what's your full potential? Because you're pretty unlimited. We are pretty unlimited as human beings, but it's the people who we attach ourselves to that help us kind of move forward and move up. And for me, I have my ability to help in some ways, but yeah, that would be it, man. I would say, like, did I help you? The way I say it is helping people in the world become 1% better every day. Did Tony Bradshaw, did the Millionaire Choice help me become 1% better today or 1% better tomorrow? If you could stack those little wins up, man, you're going to end up in a really great place.
Tony, thank you so much for your time today. I really enjoyed talking to you and learning from you. And I really appreciate the valuable information that you've given us. But before I let you go, at the end of every podcast, we like to play a rapid fire question game where I ask you 3 questions. So if you're willing to play, I'll go ahead and ask.
I'll try to keep it short. Give it to me.
Question number 1. Where's your favorite place to travel?
Favorite place to travel. I love going down to the beach, but especially down into the Caribbean. That I haven't been that very international, but that would be one of the best places. I'm gonna recommend one to some people. Try out Little Palm Island in Key West. Little Palm Island. It's a very nice resort.
And why should they try? Why should they try that out?
Well, it's an island set aside by itself. You can only get there by boat or seaplane. And you never know who you're going to run into there because the paparazzi can't get out to the island. So a lot of Hollywood stars go there to hang out and get away for a few days. And we met Richard, I forget his last name, Gas Monkey Garage off of Discovery Channel was there when we were there. Yeah, I got to talk to Richard. He was a really cool guy. And it was a lot of fun, man. But you get to ride on President Harry S. Truman's yacht. It's a small 14-foot yacht. They carry you out to the island on that boat, and it's pretty cool.
Question number 2. What song represents your life the most?
What? Beethoven's Fifth.
That's a great choice. I used to study to that song a lot. Great choice.
It's the first one that came to mind.
And look, final question. What's an amazing thing that you did that no one was around to see?
No one was around to see. You're not supposed to tell when you give things, but I think one of the coolest things about having money is when God calls on you to write a check when you weren't expecting to write a check. And I'll tell you this, the more money you have, the bigger the checks that God asks you to write are. And so there's been a few times in my life where I wasn't expecting to write checks, and God gave me a time to do that. I'll share one. There were people here at this one, but this is one that's especially, I think, teachable moment. And that was this. We were at a missionary's house one night. Those missionaries came in from Africa, in Zambia, Africa, and they ministered to the AIDS victims over there and people that were going around. AIDS is very rampant over there. I won't go into reasons why, but they raised their thing. We were talking to them. There's probably 30 people there. And they said, somebody asked, what do you guys need? Is there anything you need? And they said, oh, we need a vehicle. Our vehicle is old, and we're looking to replace it. And I felt the Holy Spirit telling me, saying, hey, you need to buy them a car. And I texted my wife, which I usually do. And I texted her. She was in the back of the room. I'm in the middle of the room. And I said, hey, I think God's telling me to buy this car. What are you hearing? What do you feel? And she's like, I agree. And I'm like, all right. So I'm thinking this thing's gonna cost me $5,000, right? I'm like, $5,000. That's an easy check. I can write that. And so I asked them, I said, hey, how much does this car cost that you need? And they say $20,000. And I'm like, oh, that's a little bit more than I expected. And I thought about it. I'm like, texted her. I'm like, I think we're going to do it. Now, here's the interesting thing. If that was all the story, that would be okay. But what happened was, if you rewind the clock just a little bit, a month or two earlier, my wife had her 40th birthday, and I bought her a $20,000 Corvette, a 1969 muscle car, for her birthday. And here we were a month or two later, and here is, God telling me to buy these people a $20,000, and I think they got a Toyota 4Runner or something like that. So that's just one example of God stepping in and going, hey, I blessed you with this. and I'm gonna, I'm gonna test you. I'm gonna test you a little bit. And so I like to think that I passed all my tests, but I'm sure I didn't.
Man, that's amazing. Tony, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it, man.
Hey, appreciate it, Wesley. Love talking to you, and I hope your audience got some value out of it.
Thank you, sir.